Mara had always been the quiet one and the girl who walked through the school corridors with her books held tightly to her chest, her gaze lowered, her presence barely a whisper. But that whisper began to irritate the wrong people, a pack of ruthless bullies led by Rylan, a boy who believed fear was power and cruelty was entertainment. And on the school's annual wildlife sanctuary trip, where warnings of restricted zones were plastered on every gate, the bullies saw their chance, surrounding Mara with wicked grins as they shoved, mocked, and threatened until the trembling girl found herself cornered near the ancient iron bars of the lion habitat, her pulse hammering as they taunted, "Let's see how the nerd handles real beasts," before giving a final, brutal push that sent her tumbling through the open maintenance gate and crashing onto the dry earth inside the lion's den, where the world fell silent except for the deep, thunderous growl that rolled through the air like a storm. Mara froze as the alpha lion, massive, scar-slashed, a creature of raw power and ancient authority, rose from the shadows and approached her with steps slow and deliberate, the sun igniting his mane like fire as the bullies outside gasped, expecting blood, expecting screams, expecting a tragedy they would never escape. But instead the lion stared into her tear-filled eyes and something indescribable happened. His growl softened into a rumbling purr, his posture shifted from predator to protector, and he lowered his massive head, nudging her gently as though comforting a wounded cub, leaving the bullies horrified and confused as this unexplainable bond formed in seconds. Mara's shaking hand reached up and touched the lion's mane, every teacher, every student watching from the barriers too stunned to react, and the giant alpha curled around her in a protective circle, glaring at the bullies with a warning so fierce they stumbled backward in terror. And in that moment Mara realized something profound, something life-altering. The creature everyone feared recognized her pain, her loneliness, and her strength long before the humans around her ever did. As she leaned into the warmth of the lion's body, tears streaming down her face, she felt, for the first time in years, safe, seen, and valued. And as keepers rushed in, tranquilizers at the ready, the lion did the unthinkable, standing over Mara like a shield and releasing a roar that shook the entire sanctuary, a declaration to the world that this girl was under his protection. And when the staff finally coaxed him away and lifted Mara to safety, the crowd erupted in disbelief, some crying, some cheering, while Rylan and his gang tried to slip away unnoticed, but every camera pointed at them, every witness glaring. And as Mara was escorted out, her whole body trembling from the emotional storm, she looked back at the majestic lion watching her leave, his golden eyes soft, almost proud, and she whispered a promise to herself that this moment, this miracle, would change everything, because she was no longer the quiet girl in the hallway. She was the girl a lion protected, the girl life refused to break, and her story was only just beginning. And as the chapter closed, a single powerful message hovered over the scene for every viewer watching die in the days following the shocking incident. Mara became an overnight phenomenon. The video of the alpha lion protecting her spread like wildfire online, news vans parked outside her school, reporters begging for interviews, sanctuary experts calling it one of the rarest emotional responses ever recorded in a wild animal. But to Mara, it wasn't fame that weighed on her, it was the memory of the lion's eyes, the unspoken connection that kept replaying in her sleep, a feeling that he had chosen her for a reason. Yet while the world celebrated her miracle, the bullies who threw her into the den faced investigations, suspensions, and a wave of consequences they never imagined, their arrogance crumbling under the pressure of the truth. And as Mara returned to the sanctuary for a supervised follow-up visit, her heart raced with a mix of fear and longing, because she needed to see him again, to understand why a creature of raw power showed her compassion instead of violence. When she stepped inside the viewing tunnel, the air thick with anticipation, the alpha lion emerged instantly as though he had been waiting, pacing with restless energy until he stopped directly in front of her with a deep, vibrating purr that echoed through the walls. Even the trainers froze as Mara approached the reinforced glass, placing her hand against it, and the lion pressed his massive paw where hers rested, a gesture so tender it brought the staff to tears. But their reunion was interrupted when Rylan, forced by authorities to attend a restorative justice session, arrived with guilt etched into every line of his face, trembling as he whispered an apology, admitting he never meant for things to go that far, that he had been fueled by insecurity, ego, and the toxic need to feel powerful. But Mara didn't respond with anger. Instead she stepped aside and gestured toward the lion, saying softly, "Look at him, even he knows how to show mercy." Rylan, shame weighing him down, looked into the lion's unblinking gaze and broke down, realizing the creature he mocked from a distance possessed more humanity than he ever had. And in a moment no one expected, the alpha lion released a low, resonant rumble, not hostile, not approving, but something in between, as though reminding the boy that forgiveness is earned, not demanded. Mara, taking a deep breath, offered Rylan a second chance, not because he deserved it, but because she refused to let hatred define her story. But just as the tension eased, chaos erupted. A young cub had slipped into a dangerous section of the enclosure during a feeding rotation, prompting keepers to panic as the mother lioness roared in distress. Mara's heart leapt as the alpha lion sprang into action, darting across the habitat with lightning speed, positioning himself between the cub and the mechanical feeding gate that was beginning to close. Without hesitation he lifted the cub gently in his jaws and returned him safely to the pride, the crowd erupting in relieved applause. And in that heroic moment, Mara understood the truth. The alpha lion wasn't just a protector, he was a guardian born of instinct, loyalty, and a heart far greater than the world believed. As she watched him return to his resting rock, bathed in sunlight like a king carved from gold, she whispered, "Thank you for everything," and the lion bowed his head once in acknowledgement, a gesture so profound it cemented their bond forever. And as the chapter closed, Mara turned to the camera crew documenting her journey and said with steady confidence, In the weeks that followed the rescue of the cub, Mara's life shifted from extraordinary to almost unreal. Documentaries requested her presence, animal behavior experts analyzed her bond with the alpha lion, and even global charities reached out asking her to help advocate for endangered wildlife. But amid the noise, Mara felt a quiet pull inside her, as though the lion's golden eyes still echoed in her soul, calling her back to something deeper, something unfinished. She visited the sanctuary. More often, not out of curiosity or fame, but because each time the alpha saw her, his posture changed from regal authority to something almost joyful, his tail flicking, his chest rising with a warm rumble that staff described as the closest thing to a lion's smile, and each encounter strengthened the invisible thread tying their worlds together. Yet underneath the peace, trouble brewed. The sanctuary director revealed that the land the lions lived on was under threat from a powerful corporation seeking to expand a mining project into protected territory, meaning habitat loss, displacement, and the potential separation of the pride forever, a revelation that left Mara stunned and furious because after everything these majestic creatures had given her, protection, courage, purpose, she couldn't stand by and watch their home be destroyed. Determined to fight for them, Mara organized a campaign, rallying students, teachers, activists, and online supporters who had followed her story from day one, turning her once timid voice into a rallying cry for wildlife justice. But the corporation wasn't intimidated. They accused the sanctuary of overreacting, insisting on their legal rights, and even tried to frame the lions as dangerous liabilities by leaking distorted footage from years ago, sparking media controversy that painted the alpha as a threat rather than the gentle guardian she knew him to be. Heartbroken but not defeated, Mara returned to the sanctuary late one afternoon, needing clarity, and the moment she approached the enclosure the alpha lion rose from his resting place, walking toward her with slow, deliberate steps until he stood directly before her, the fading sunlight turning his mane into a halo of molten gold. Mara pressed her hand against the reinforced glass, whispering, "I won't let them take your home," and to her astonishment, the lion responded by lowering his head and releasing a deep, solemn rumble, as if he understood the war that was coming. Suddenly, a sharp crash echoed across the valley. Construction crews, moving equipment onto the protected soil ahead of schedule, ignoring protests, ignoring laws, ignoring everything but profit, and Mara's anger ignited into something fierce and unwavering. She ran to the fence line with sanctuary staff chasing after her, shouting warnings. But she didn't stop because the world needed to see what she had seen, the truth about who the real threat was. Cameras recorded as the alpha lion climbed atop a large boulder in the center of the habitat, roaring with such power and heartbreak that the sky seemed to tremble, a roar not of violence but of pleading for the right to exist, for his pride, for his future. And that sound carried across social media, across news broadcasts, across millions of hearts within hours. People began flooding the sanctuary gates, demanding justice, demanding legal protection, demanding that the mining corporation back down, and in that rising tide of global support, Mara found her courage burning brighter than ever before. She stood before the crowd, standing small but unshakably strong, and declared, "If a lion has the courage to roar for his freedom, then we must have the courage to fight for it." A statement that instantly went viral and shifted the entire narrative. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Mara looked back at the alpha, still standing tall, watching her with unwavering trust, and she realized that her journey with him had evolved from survival to destiny. She wasn't just the girl the lion protected anymore. She was the girl now fighting to protect him. And as this chapter closes, Mara turns to the camera with steady eyes and says, "If you're with me, if you believe in this fight, subscribe now. Because the next chapter will decide everything."